Welcome back to Wisdom Wednesday on small changes, big shifts, building rhythm and resilience. Many of you know that about 6 weeks ago, as it started coming down, my spirit started saying, Michelle, you've got to find a rhythm so you can have resilience during this reset. And I thought, if I need that, so do my friends. And so I reached out to my other friends so they can help us build that. And we did Motivational Monday this week, and then Total Health Tuesday with Dr. Jay Dunn yesterday. And then we're doing Wisdom Wednesday today with Ron and Beth Hall. And then Thursday, we're going to be doing Talk Story Thursday with my friend Sonia Choquette. And then Friday we'll be with Meredith Suarez. So that's kind of the rundown for the rest of the week. But I'm going to invite you to kind of get grounded. So everybody just kind of take a deep breath. And I like to really pretend that I have elephant nostrils on the bottom of my feet. So it makes me take in a deeper breath. And then just bathe your body in that breath. And what we're learning more and more with COVID is how precious the gift of the lungs are in breathing. And let all that breath out and just kind of like a balloon totally deflate. And just kind of get here in the moment. And Patricia, if you're able and you feel comfortable, we'd love to see your face. If not, we totally understand. But today, I wanted to start with a quote from Dr. Dunn yesterday when she talked about my happy genes. The quote that I've kind of stuck with me from yesterday. There you are. Hi, Patricia. The quote that stuck with me from yesterday was, I'm going to get a PhD in me. I'm going to get a PhD in me. And I think what some people may or may not know, that if you drive around your car, which you're not driving around now, most of us aren't, 12,000 miles a year, and you're listening to either books on tape or podcast, it's a college education every year. How about that? So if you think about, if we were driving today, we're going to spend about 45 minutes together. And so that would be about 45 miles. So you're just getting a little bit of tool notch for a little bit more education. And so you're definitely in for a Wisdom Wednesday today with our guests. So Ron Hall's life was centered around a successful career as an international art dealer and a passion for his Rocky Top Ranch on Brazos River. All this changed in 1998 as a result of an encounter with a homeless man, Denver Moore, who was threatening to kill everyone in sight of the homeless shelter where Ron had begun to volunteer 2 weeks earlier. The life-changing encounter, featured on many television and radio shows, inspired Ron to write his first book, Same Kind of Different as Me, a story of hope and redemption. Can you imagine how much hope and redemption we need in today's times? And yet most of us are not homeless. The word of mouth hit became a New York Times platinum bestseller and stayed on the list for more than 3.5 years. In 2007, President Bush appointed Ron to the State Department Cultural Property Committee to advise the president on diplomatic matters regarding international art and antiquities. Currently, Ron is the screenwriter and producer of the movie version of his book, Same Kind of Different as Me, which can be found on Netflix and Amazon. His new book, Working Our Way Home, released February 20, 2018. Ron and his wife, Beth, reside in Dallas, where they direct the Same Kind of Different as Me Foundation. Thank you for saying yes and joining me on Wisdom Wednesday today.
Well, thanks. It's nice to see you again.
It's nice to see you. Well, we had so much fun in Kansas City with our friends at AMC Theaters, launching and celebrating your movie, Same Kind of Different as Me. Just by a show of hands, has anybody read the book, Same Kind of Different as Me, or seen the movie? It's pretty great, Patricia, isn't it? I want to tell you, when I read that book, Tom Hill, we talked about earlier, recommended it. And it was a soul changer. You know, there's game changers in every part of your life, but that book changed my soul. So tell us a glimpse of the story. Just a highlight, because I want everybody to get the movie.
Very, very, very quick highlight of the story is in 1998, my late wife, Debbie, had a literal dream about a homeless man, obviously who was poor but wise. And she said it was like a verse in Ecclesiastes 9:15, where Solomon wrote, "There's found in the city a certain poor man who is wise, and by his wisdom our city and lives would be changed." So that next morning after her dream, she asked me to go into the inner city and search for this man of her dreams. And it took a couple of weeks of looking and serving in a homeless shelter until all of a sudden one evening we were getting ready to serve a meal to about 300 homeless men, when a big fight breaks out in the in the dining room, and in storms this giant who started the fight. And he's screaming he's going to kill everyone. He said, I'm going to kill whoever done it. I'm going to kill whoever stole my shoes. And my wife said, that's him. And I said, that's who? She said, that's the man in my dream. And she said, and I think I heard from God that you have to be his friend. And I said, well, honey, I was not at that meeting you had. And if I'm going to be friends with someone who wants to kill everybody, then maybe I should go talk to God myself. So that's how the whole story got started.
Wow. What amazing journey you've been on. What year was that in, by the way?
It was 1998.
That's right. You said 1998. So that's 22 years ago.
That's right.
Wow. What are some of the gifts you've received from that experience with Denver Moore?
What I've received is sitting right next to me, and my new wife, Beth. You know, when you have tragedy that occurs in your life and you don't think things will ever be beautiful again, and then all of a sudden God finds the perfect person for you to spend the rest of your life with, and that's what he brought me with Beth. And so she helps me run our homeless foundation, which we try to be the 911 call and fulfillment center for underfunded homeless missions. And I'd say that most of them are underfunded, but we try to work with the smaller one. In fact, there was a mission in Kansas last year that they had their electricity and heating cut off for not paying their bills in the coldest month of the winter. So we had to make an emergency request there in Kansas City, or not in Kansas City, but a small town in Kansas, of a woman who was holding a mission in her home to take care of about 30 homeless people, and she used her own home for that. So that's what we try to respond to through our website, Same Kind of Different as Me Foundation. And so we get grant requests almost daily, certainly every week, for some emergency need. And we're a small foundation, so we can only give $2,500 per request. That's usually enough to get the power back on or get an automobile repaired. That's a lot of those kind of things. The roof is leaking, the refrigerator went out, and the stove broke, all these kind of things when people are operating on a shoestring, trying to show God's love to people that a lot of people are unlovable. My friend Denver used to say that he and I, when we would travel together, that he said, I'm just an old ex-con, and my friend here, Mr. Ron's an old art dealer, but we just two sinners with a message of hope for those that ain't got none. So that's what we still try to do. Is one of the greatest gifts that I ever got was my friend Denver, the homeless man, who taught me so much. And that's the only reason I'm here today. You're not here to talk to me about my almost 50-year career as an art dealer, international art dealer, where I've sold, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of great masterpieces. But that's not the story that anybody really cares about. The story is how that Denver, a homeless man, gave me hope, and so helped me get my life, redirected from just being someone that chased money to someone that now chases hope for people, to give them some hope. So,
well, I'm grateful that you guys joined me today to kind of spread hope and spread wisdom. So, Beth, you came onto the scene, and I don't know, did you ever get to meet Denver in person?
I did, yes, for a little over a year. Yep.
And what are some of your takeaways from Hope with Denver? I mean, what a gift,
Yes, he was a quiet, kind of mysterious guy, but you knew there was a lot behind those eyes that you could see. And so it was kind of like he was a kind of a crab where he was hard on the inside, but he had a soft inside. And, I just had great conversations with him and just learned to not judge a book by its cover, to just really kind of get in and give someone a chance for who they really are, get to know them.
I think it's interesting to think about what you just said, hard on the outside and soft on the inside. And as we think about what we're going through right now with this fascinating times, and I believe that the world has changed forever, in so many ways. Some good, not so good. We talked to Kathy Nelson, who, is in charge of big events, and Listening to the news this morning talking about really shifting Major League Baseball. Well, it may go back to some playing in July, but no fans initially. And that's just really fascinating to think about. So I'm thinking about that hope. And from everything you guys have experienced with somebody who had no hope and who was living on the streets and was going to kill somebody because they stole their shoes. I'm guessing most people here on the call probably have too many shoes. And so what wisdom would you share with us today? I'm going to go with you, Beth, first, from what everybody's going through around this COVID-19 experience.
Oh gosh, let's see. What would I say? I would say to look at the glass half full, not half empty. And, your mindset, get your mindset and your attitude in a positive place and just look at it, just try to make lemonade out of the lemons or just choose to be positive.
So some people, I'm glad you brought up half full, half empty. One of the questionnaires I ask, which I'll be teaching on tonight actually for one of our school districts, I have this questionnaire that I give people on the quadrants of well-being. And one of the questionnaires is, are you a cup half full or cup half empty? And we talked to Dr. Jay Dunn yesterday, who talks about genes and how some of us genetically are cup half empty. When you look at me on a scale of 0 to 10, I'm probably about a 7. If I'm around the wrong person, it can pull me down. If I'm around the right person, I can go up to a 10. So for somebody that may be a 3 or 4, what are some tools that maybe you two have developed in your own lives to look half full? Are there some tools that you've just kind of spun throughout your life to create that?
I would say what I listen to, what I read.
The people you hang around. Yes.
Yeah, the people I hang around.
Yeah, you are. What's the quote you give me all the time? You are the sum of what?
The 5 people that you spend the most time with.
Well, we're definitely getting some good things because we've been around some of the same people here the last 3 weeks, joining on these calls today, and then I would say have some listening. So it's just some thoughts on to it. It's hard, and as Jay was talking about yesterday, I love how they kind of tie together. Who's like I said, a genetic expert, and she has a myhappygenes.com and chatting about how some people, you can maybe take the right vitamin. It could be maybe you need vitamin D or vitamin B or something else to enhance your system. So those are some thoughts there. When you think about resilience, and you've been around a lot of people that are homeless, what are some of the resilient skills you've learned from them, or any knowledge you want to share around that? Either one of you.
Well, we've been around a lot of homeless people. We've taken homeless people in our home to live with us. And, the thing in our case of being with homeless people, it's to accept them for who God made them and not for who we want them to be, but for us to encourage them to be the best version of themselves. And so, we've done this on several occasions, and we've had some success and some not success yet. So, but we believe that ultimately God is in charge of these people. He made them like He made us, and so if we can help them be the better version. But it takes love. It takes forgiveness. Our whole story is based on forgiveness. In fact. My new friend, Catherine Schwarzenegger, what's her name now? Catherine Schwarzenegger. Pratt. Yes. So she married Chris Pratt, the actor, and changed her name. But she just wrote a book on forgiveness, and she did a chapter on my story and Denver's story and Debbie's story, because our story is based on forgiveness. Because if you've read our book or seen our film, you know that I was an unfaithful husband. And the forgiveness that Debbie showed me, which was Christ-like, she threw my sin as far as the east is from the west, never to bring it up again, in turn for my promise to never do that again. But it was that forgiveness that led us on a path to rebuild a life, and a marriage that we had together, restore family, and then the love, that it took to give the forgiveness, and then the greater love that came as a result of the forgiveness. That's the reason that I became friends with Denver, because I had promised her I would do anything that she asked me the rest of our lives together. for that forgiveness. And of course, when she asked me to be friends with this homeless man who was known on the streets as Suicide. Everybody called him Suicide because he had no friends. He didn't speak to anybody. He didn't want any friends, and he lived by a dumpster got his back, and he carried a baseball bat and beat the tar out of anybody that looked cross-eyed at him. You know, he just was an angry man, but he was absent of love. He needed forgiveness, and all of those things came together to restore a life that became such a beautiful story. And as you know, in our new book, I'll show you here the cover called Working Our Way Home. I'm reading this every night on our Facebook page, same kind of different as me, Foundation Facebook page. I read that every night just to encourage people that, you know, what we see sometimes. Denver, my homeless friend, Suicide, used to tell me that, you know, most of you folks see the homeless as a problem. But let me tell you how God sees us. He said, God sees us as an opportunity for the faithful to show his love. So that's what we have tried to do, is just show love and mercy and forgiveness. And those kind of things are what changes lives. And in this time of what I've been calling Corona jail, but actually it's been a good sentence, because we've had time to reach out to people that we've not talked to in ages. Beth is really good at that, and just reaching out yesterday to a friend of hers that she's not talked to in years, and having a long conversation. And so, you know, it's just checking in with people and just reminding them of how important they are in our lives, or how important they have been in our lives, and we've missed out by doing these things. So this is one of the good things that's coming out of Corona, is taking the time to go back and check in with people that have been important in your lives, and to thank them for that.
Well, I love it. I love check in, reach out, and then thank them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Check in, reach out, and then thank them. You know, in my second book, E Factor, Engage, Energize, Enrich, that's what we talk about, enrich. And I think this time gives you a chance to reflect and look about the people that have kind of helped navigate your life. Just like Ron, would you say that it was probably just part of God's plan for you to meet Denver?
Oh, absolutely. It wasn't my plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely, in fact, Denver, before he went to heaven, he would tell everybody that this is totally a God story. It wasn't my story or his story. This was a God story, because, you know, it just could not have happened. I mean, how did someone, I was an international art dealer that traveled the world dealing with the fanciest people in the world and selling masterpieces, and with major museums. You know, I'd never been in a homeless shelter. I didn't want to be in a homeless shelter. That was not on my bucket list. And then to be friends with a man who was an ex-con, who did not read or write, who didn't know a Rembrandt from a Jackson Pollock. You know, he didn't know anything about art. He knew nothing. In fact, not having learned to read and write, he was never given the opportunity to go to school. But not even, he was not interested in anything. He was only interested in the spirit world of just sitting and listening for God to speak to him. So he didn't know sports. In fact, I asked him, I said, did you know any presidents? You know, we were going through a presidential election at that time in 2000. I said, tell me all the names of the presidents you know. And he says, Abraham Lincoln. He set us free. And I said, that's the only president you ever heard of? He said, yeah. He said, I know about one. Wasn't one killed in Dallas? And I said, yeah. And he said, what was his name? I said, Kennedy. He said, yeah, I know about him too. So that's the only thing he knew. He didn't know sports, current events, or politics. He only knew the spirit world, and what, you know, he believed that God spoke to him and just put him on this earth for a purpose, but he couldn't figure out why, because he said nothing was ever going his way. until Miss Debbie showed him some love. So.
When did you, I'm going to you first, Beth, on this, and I'll come back to you, Ron. Beth, when did you realize the magic of having Ron in your life? And I know I've heard the story, but I don't remember the story, and neither does anybody else here on there. When did you realize there was magic in that? And then, Ron, I'm going to come to you and ask, at what point in the relationship with Denver, was it 2 minutes in? Was it 10 years in that did you realize how it was going to significantly change your life? But first to you, Beth, on that question.
How did I know it was magic? I would say from the first date, because the first date, just the way it was set up, I had left Texas. I was in South Carolina. He got word that I left. Then, just inviting me to go on these beautiful, romantic, extravagant trips. I met in Paris. We went from one trip to the next. Our first date, we say, lasted 90 days. And so just right from the get-go, it was magical. And then to learn about the story and to meet Denver and then just to be a part of the whole scenario was just, I couldn't believe, that I was a part of it. And then at that time we were making a movie with Disney. So that was exciting and kind of a whirlwind. And then that didn't work out. And so then there began the whole journey and adventure of making the movie. So that took on, several years of our relationship at the beginning. But I would say from the first date, 90-day first date, ending up in Italy, starting in Paris, France, ending up in Italy. It was like just a fairy tale. So.
Well, thinking about the first date, and by the way, to our listeners here today that are live with us, this is a great time to post any questions you have. You know the drill if you've been with me for the last few days. So go ahead and post those questions and we'll bring them up. So I'm not sure, unless you've been around you guys enough, and this is the second or third time we've had a conversation. We met in Kansas City for the showing. You've been so gracious sharing your time and knowledge and most of all your heart. That's what I see when I see both of you. But there's been some hard moments, right? Been some hard moments where maybe life was not going as you wanted to, possibly financially or otherwise. Do you want to share one of those hard moments? Just so people know that you're real. You're not somebody who's living this extravagance life.
I want to get back to the point where while it's still on my mind, because now that I have this aging brain, but I tell people that Beth has the hardest job of any wife in America, or one of them, because she has to go with me every day. We're constantly together, even though she has her own business. But she has to listen to a husband. She's married to a man who will not shut up talking about his first wife. Mm-hmm. And so that's a hard job that she has taken with grace and mercy, and she just shows it. She's just embraces that role as someone who's keeping the legacy of my late wife in the forefront and trying to make a difference, using her talents to make a difference in keeping the legacy of my first wife alive. I honor her for that.
Yes. Lift you up there. Mm-hmm.
Now, back to the other question was, what was it?
That's a great question.
The magic of Denver. Well,
hang on. But I want people to hear that it's not been all easy, because I was reminded about the moment when you're ready to give up and somebody shows up in your life.
Well, that's true. And we had gone through, when Beth and I got married, I basically gave my children, as if I had died, I gave them their inheritance early, just so that they wouldn't, they didn't think I should get remarried again. But I had been single 11 years after Debbie died when Beth and I got married. And so I thought I had given myself enough time, and I was lonely. So we just went ahead and gave them everything, knowing that we kept a little bit to live on and make a movie. Well, we ended up having problems with the movie. We had a lot of well-intentioned people that turned out to be not so good for us. And so we ended up losing most of our money trying to make the film, trying to change the way that the world sees the homeless. And this was our mission, was we really wanted to make a difference in the way that the people see the homeless, to see the homeless through God's eyes, you know. And because Denver used to tell me, he said, Mr. Ron, you know, why is it that all you Christians worship one homeless man on Sunday and turn your back on the first one you see on Monday? He said, Mr. Ron, you never know whose eyes God is watching you out of, and it ain't going to be your preacher or your Sunday school teacher. He said, it might be a fellow that looks like me. He said, no, it ain't me. It might be a fellow that looks like me, and God's checking you out to see what kind of person you really are. So, you know, that our purpose in making this movie and starting this foundation was to change the way that people see and react with the homeless. And for some reason, and I'm not blaming this on God, I have to take, you know, I have to own my part of it, but we made some bad decisions along the way. I gave up a very successful art career to work only for the homeless and this film. And that didn't pay off financially. You know, you may have some crowns in heaven, but
I mean, people think that we're
rich, millionaires.
That
think
means.
Yes.
And I say, listen, you know, we live very modestly. We haven't made one penny from the movie.
We've
people
not made a penny
shocked
from
to
the
hear
movie.
that we haven't made one penny from the movie.
And millions from the book went to the homeless. So, you know, we've done all these things.
I think it's a test.
This is a test. Now this new book, Working Our Way Home, me and Beth. And this is the title of that, which is so beautiful, is that Denver, one of the first times when I knew the magic happened with Denver is after our catch and release meeting, which is very, very well documented. When he said, you know, wasn't looking for any friends and didn't want to be a friend to anybody, and especially white people, because when he was young, the white people roped and dragged him behind horses. They were Klansmen for helping a white woman change a flat tire on the plantation. So he had made a promise never again to speak to a white person. But when I kept asking him to be my friend, and he said there's something that bothered him about white people, and I said, what is that? He said, well, it's got to do with fishing. I said, well, Denver, I'm not a fisherman. I'm an art dealer, and I know about art, but I'm not a fisherman. He said, but I bet you can answer the question. And I said, so, okay, what is the question? He said, well, I heard when white people go fishing, they do this thing they call catch and release. I said, well, of course they do, Denver. It's a sport. And you don't get it? He said, no, sir, I don't get it. Because back on the plantation where I grew up in Louisiana, we'd go out in the morning, we'd dig us a can full of worms, cut us a cane pole, and sit on the riverbank all day. And when we got something on our line, we were really proud of what we caught. And he said, so it just occurred to me, if you're a white man fishing for a friend, and you're going to catch and release, I ain't got no desire to be your friend. But if you is fishing for a real friend, then I'll be your friend for life. That was a magical moment to me. If I've ever heard from God in my life, it's at that moment, take a chance and be his friend. And I did, and I can tell you, God completely repainted the canvas of my life and rewrote my life story on that day. And the next morning, I went to be with him by his dumpster, sitting on the curb by his dumpster. And he still scared the living daylights out of me. I mean, here was a guy known as suicide that threatened everybody that came around him. And he sat there with his baseball bat, and I took a seat next to him by his dumpster. And he didn't say anything. I didn't say anything, and I was getting scared. So I just said, what's it like to be homeless? And he looked at me like I was the biggest idiot in the world. And he said, well, I don't know. Why don't you tell me? Well, I've never been homeless. I don't know what it's like to be homeless. And he said, well, let me tell you something, Mr. Ron. Whether we is rich or whether we is poor or something in between, this earth ain't no final resting place. He says, so in a way, we all homeless, just working our way home. So in honor of my friend Denver, I named our book, Working Our Way Home. And that's actually a picture of two of us that when we were working at my ranch one day on the cover. So it's a beautiful story. I said It's the story of a grieving millionaire and a homeless ex-con thrown together to save each other, because that's literally what we did. I'd say that Denver did far more for me than I ever did for him. Even though we lived together for more than 10 years after Debbie went to heaven, I received a much more benefit from that than he did, even though he became the first person in the history of the New York Times best-selling list to not know how to read and write when he wrote his first book that became a #1 New York Times bestseller.
I wonder what Denver would say about today's times, where people are their foundations being reorganized. And I would say your foundation was reorganized, Ron, and maybe more in alignment with what you were here to do on the planet. So I wonder what he would say now. What would you think Denver would say right now about today's times?
Oh, in today's times? Well, I know exactly what he would say, because anytime something was kind of out of the ordinary happened, he'd look at me and he'd say, Mr. Ron, you know, if the devil ain't messing with you, he's already got you. Well, I know that this is maybe some evil that is messing with us. This is not God, you know, because God is about good and evil is not. But so this is the force of good and evil right now that we're fighting this battle with COVID and everything else. And I just I believe that you know, Denver was the wisest man that I ever met. I mean, someone was talking to me the other day that wanting me to write a book just on the wisdom of Denver. Take me out of the whole thing, because our books here are about our relationship and our friendship. But Denver was the wise man, and I would like to honor him and his wisdom, because I mean, he was so smart.
Well, I feel that you have honored him, and he brought out the wisdom in you, and you brought out the wisdom in him. And so it's that you both needed each other. It's kind of like salt and pepper. You know, you needed each other to bring this message. I want to celebrate you a little bit. I'm a word nerd. Celebrate, guide, connect, hope. I want to celebrate you. And how much money have you raised for the homeless? Beth and Ron, how much have you guys raised?
We have helped raise through our books and through our speaking events, which you've been to and seen. We've raised probably $110 million for the homeless. In fact,
that's probably collectively, whatever, 15 years.
Yeah, collectively over 15 years. Right before Denver went to heaven, we had raised about 60 million by that time. And he had given all his money away. He'd become a millionaire and gave it all back to the homeless. And I had given all of mine to my children and lawyers and movie people. And so we were talking about that, how we had making a movie and had a #1 New York Times bestseller, and we were both broke. And he said, Mr. Ron, did you ever think about all these millions? It's about that time, it was 60 million, just keeping a few dollars for that for ourselves? And I started laughing. I said, sounds like you have. He said, yeah, I sure did. I said, well, I think if we had kept it, that God would not have honored what we have done. And I think what we have done is more important than the money that we received from. So,
well, you make me think of the phrase that has stuck with me for 4 decades. And this is a great time for questions, by the way, as we start to wrap up, people, if you have questions, and maybe share the love. But I think about, what is it? Poor's the state of mind, broke's the state of being.
Oh,
have you heard that before? Poor's the state of mind, broke's the state of being. And so I've tried to never use the word poor when I was broke, you know, so that I didn't own that poorness in my soul. And I believe that the gift of your heart, once again, I hope everybody here watches the movie. I personally love the book. Truly, it changed my life, the way I looked at homeless people. It just changed my life and just people in general. And my genetics are kind of a kind person. That's just who I am. But it even stepped it up a notch, and to really think about some of the words you said. There's a book out right now. Is it called White Fragility? Maybe. Have you guys seen that book yet?
No.
I know it's downstairs, like 2 stories down outside. Run and get it, but I can't do that and get back up without losing my breath and losing the track. But I think it's called White Fragility, and it's on my next reading list here. So Mark asks, where can we see the movie? What's the best win for you guys for us to get the movie?
Netflix or Amazon?
Netflix or the DVD. You can order DVD on Amazon, or it's on Amazon, but it's it's widely available on DVD. In fact, the Blu-ray version is what I like the best, because Paramount ended up cutting out 20 minutes of the film, and in the Blu-ray version they show a bonus content of about 10 or 15 scenes that they cut out that I thought were important, and so we put that back in the Blu-ray version of the DVD and Blu-ray. One is Blu-ray and one's DVD.
Well, and also when the movie came out, they released a movie version of the book, and they used the movie poster on the book. And I never know where to look, by the way. Do I look at the dot up at the top, or do I look at you? I never know.
I don't know either. Just look whatever. I see you. You're looking at me. I'm talking to you. So.
Okay. So in that book with the movie poster, at the end of the book, they included 4 chapters on making the movie. And so that kind of tells you all the trials and tribulations and the twists and turns it took to get the movie on the big screen.
That's what they tell the story of the people showing up in the restaurant, right?
Yes.
On that bike where you guys stopped at someplace on a motorcycle ride, and
that's right.
Somebody showed up. I'm not going to tell the rest of it, because that's worth you getting the book. It's a great story of hope, redemption, really just listening. Like I said, I know we're in this fascinating time right now, and life is much easier to live backwards than it is forward. So as you guys look back on life, the last, 3 or 4 decades, what would be your top 2 or 3 things that you think about? Let's say even away from, I don't know, can you separate life from Denver, pre-Denver, post-Denver? You can't.
Not really, because he took over. I guess our friendship really took over my life, for my family, for my new wife, for everything. It's our whole life really revolves around my friendship with Denver. On being on programs like this and on TV shows and writing new books, and the friends that we meet come. We do speaking events all across America, and if you have your friends want to book us for an event, they can go to our Same Kind of Different as Me Foundation website. But all of those events have been canceled this year, so we're now taking events for the fall. But it's our life is really this is our life. People, I say that if I guess I thought my legacy would be as an art dealer, but now I know that even if I sold the Mona Lisa to the Pope, that I would be still known more for my friendship with a homeless ex-con named Suicide. So, because he defined my life. And
I'm thinking about my Denver Moore, and my Denver Moore was Dr. Yenny, who really put into awareness this whole person health model, and it's kind of how it's a legacy. I'm just continuing his legacy, and he just would have had his birthday, his I believe 88th birthday. So it's fascinating to think about how people can just drip into your life and it just takes off. And so as we think about the experience we're having right now, connection's huge. And Ron, you mentioned the word lonely. And, Beth came into your life. I think there's so many people that are surrounded by people, but they're lonely. What wisdom would you have around the word lonely? Depression, anxiety, but mostly the word lonely. Either one of you.
Well, I know that my friend Denver is the one that helped me out of that. And I'd say that I'm embarrassed to say this to all of your friends and followers, but I was so lonely and depressed that I refused to get dressed. And I would sit in my backyard by the swimming pool naked, drinking wine and smoking cigars. So, and Denver would somehow find me and tell me to get up, that that I did not, I wasn't doing myself any favor. I had to move on and look at for the good in something instead of just the bad and the negative. So just my friendship with him, he helped me out of that situation. So if you know of someone that's going through that, just be a friend for them and encourage them. You know, there are still good things in everyone's life that is lonely. But I'd say if you're lonely, it's because you're probably not taking the steps to get out of it, because, you know, you can call up a friend. You can do all of these things. It's hard. But if you know someone that's lonely, it's better as friends also to call them and just encourage them. So.
You know, I'm not sure. You actually just made me think of somebody that I've been coaching for a couple of years. I think some people don't feel like they have a friend. And what if you feel like you're all alone and you have no friends? What advice would you share?
Well, actually, I'd say that, you know, you do have a friend in God, because he created you and he made you for a purpose, and you need to really try to examine what your purpose is, and you know, even just if you get in his word or read some books of encouragement. But you know, loneliness is a killer. It can kill people. It causes depression and all of the kinds of things that you know, nothing really good comes from loneliness and depression. So I wish you are certainly a person that can encourage people out of that. You're asking an old art dealer that, you know, and it doesn't know much about those things, because I have really only been depressed one time in my life, and it was just a few months after the death of a wife that I was married to for 30 years, who set my life on a new path by her dream. And so, you know, I was very depressed over that. I was angry at God, because I thought, why would God take a woman who dedicated her life to serving the homeless and leave some of the bad critters that are still out there on the street? Denver did the same thing. I said, he asked God the same question. And because he said, why didn't you take me instead of Miss Debbie? She was doing all the good, and I ain't done no good for nobody. And but he said he heard from God. He said, well, that's what I did for my own son. I brought him home. And he said, so maybe that's what I'm doing for Miss Debbie, so that people will know her story and will be encouraged by it to get involved and make a difference in their friends' lives and in their community, and whatever impact or influence they can have among their peers and friends and stuff.
Well, the way I feel the Holy Spirit is I get chills down my left side, and I just got those. And so for those of you struggling, is, you know, just keep showing up, you know, and I have a principle of LTR, lifetime relationships, and what is show up. And that's what you're doing by showing up here today and getting some type of wisdom or some type of nuggets. And what I love about what Eleanor and Zach are doing, they're sending you the nuggets the next day. Hopefully, Dorothy, you got those. If you didn't, I remembered your message said you didn't get those, but we want to share these nuggets. So hopefully you'll share them with your friends. And we're just creating a ripple, just like this story of Beth and Debbie and Ron Hall and Denver Moore have created hope for somebody else to latch onto. And that's what I encourage all of you to do. Latch on to the word hope and latch on to your faith. And if you don't have faith, just work to find it and just create a window to really dive into that faith. You know, there's just so much wisdom in the call today. You know, Patricia asked, when did Denver die and what did he die of and when?
He died March 31st, 2012. He died of COPD, which, you know, his lungs just basically shut down. I thought that he probably had cancer, but I took him to the doctor often, and he coughed all the time and couldn't breathe very well, very much like COVID, I guess, except he had started smoking at 5 years old, and he never gave up smoking. So that's what killed him.
The genes there. You know, have you ever thought about going back to your rich art dealer self? Has it ever been saying, you know what, I was at this fork in the road and I went this way. Can I go back to my old fork and wonder where you would have been had you just stayed the art dealer?
Well, absolutely, because when my car with 176,000 miles on it broke down the other day, and I couldn't afford to get another one, I said, yeah, I think I'm going to go back and start selling some art again. So anyway, I think there's a time, I believe that I have, God has used me mightily in the last 20 years for this homeless cause. But I also, now I have a reason to provide and leave something, not only just a legacy of books and things like that, but I need to leave maybe some kind of retirement fund for Beth. And so I'm back in that art world again. And just in the last few months. So
we have a small art gallery that we're starting to get.
Well, there's a nice piece of art behind you. I'm admiring that.
Oh, that was our wedding gift from a Cuban American artist named Julio Larraz. And so he and Ron have a long friendship, and that was my first piece of art to receive.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Tribe, I'm on my last question, so if you have anything you want to share in the chat notes, this is a good time to do that. So here's my. Oh, I've got two questions. I'm going to go with one question because I promised you 45 minutes and we're at 48 right now. What medicine, Beth, to you? What's your medicine for you to share with the world? We all have medicine we give. What's your medicine?
I've never been asked that before. What is my medicine?
I can tell you it's dance. I come down every morning. She goes to dance class every morning. Because she does this exercise fitness. It's like Zumba or something like that. But she doesn't, no matter how she feels, she gets up and she goes to this dance class. Now she's doing it online in the living room. So I'm upstairs trying to do business or write or something, but I hear this music downstairs and she's just dancing away. But that makes her, that's her medicine. It's good medicine for her. It keeps her healthy and alive. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
Well, I think your medicine's joy. Every time I'm with you, I just see a joy. I see joy guides all around you. So I would say how you're sharing the world is joy. Okay, so since he answered yours, what's Ron's medicine for the world?
I would say motivation. He is a motivational speaker. He's a great storyteller. He has great stories to tell. He's led a very interesting life. And I think that you influence people. People look up to you and want to hear what you have to say. Yeah. So I think it's the gift of gab, the gift of storytelling, maybe.
Gift of gab. So how can people connect? How can we support what you're doing? What's the best way for us to do that besides maybe buy the movie, number one, buy the book?
This is, Beth has a copy of the movie version of the book that tells how the movie got made. Our Same Kind Foundation. If you know someone that is looking for a motivational speaker or fundraiser or anything like that, you can go to our website on our Same Kind Foundation. If you want a personalized copy of Working Our Way Home or any of our books, if you make a donation to our foundation, I'll send you a personalized copy of our books.
You also have a website for yourself that kind of promotes you and the different things that you do.
That's right, just ronrhall.com as well. But anyway, and I'm thinking too that I would have not have known you if we had not come to Kansas City the first time. So one of my good friends from high school who ended up living in Kansas City, he's on the board of AMC, Lloyd and Sue Ann Hill, invited us to Kansas City. And so many good things have come from that. So I would be remiss if I didn't honor them for them insisting that I come to Kansas City about 3 years ago. And just life has become beautiful with a lot of good people like you in Kansas City. And I appreciate your friendship.
Well, and their son, Ron,
yes,
and his wife, Barbie, are dear friends of mine. Barbie actually did an interview on April 1st of my podcast. She kind of reversed it because, she was a TV personality. And so we kind of did a joint interview where she actually got to be the one asking questions. Kind of put me on the pickle seat too. So, first of all, so thank you so much for having the courage to friend Denver and share his story. the people on the show today that are live with us today. First of all, thank you for joining us. I'm so grateful. It's so much more fun for me to do an interview. I probably will not go back to the old way I did podcast interviews because I love seeing a few faces and hearing your reactions. So I get emails every day, people wanting to be on the podcast. I'm like, you know what? I'm retooling it. Bring me back in June. And we're going to be doing the Rhythm and Resilience Monday and Friday, Monday and Friday in the month of May. We've got some great guests lined up. And I'll remind you that tomorrow we have Sonia Choquette, who's been a friend of mine for 20 years. And we'll have a great conversation about intuition. You probably remember her daughter, Sonia Tolley, was on Fun Friday a few weeks ago. And boy, was she a home run, just like today's guest. So here's some love for you. Beautiful story. Thanks for sharing with us. That's from Bridget. Miriam agreed. You're keeping Denver's spirit alive. And when you say Denver, I think it's just the Holy Spirit. You know, when I think of Denver, I think about God's wisdom talking through this. If we can all be Jesus with clothes on as we go out and we take the next word we say to the person, whether it's them handing us our to-go meal, since we're doing to-go, or it's being nice to the Costco person or the grocery person. I've heard that some people they're just getting cranky. So put on that, what would Jesus do, or that God thoughts as you're doing it. So thank you for keeping that story alive. Mark says, I'm going to miss my meeting every day. Thank you, Ron. It's very inspiring. I want to just say, you just inspire me. I have blessing bags in my car. So now when I pull up at a place and there's somebody that has a different fortune than I do, I make sure I share with that. And because of something you said, Ron, I don't just share that. I typically throw some dollars in there too, because I think people can be in judgment of how are they going to drink this or whatever they're going to do. You know what? Who cares? You know, if I've been fortunate enough to share.
It's important to ask them their name.
Yes.
Very important. And just say, hey, I'm sorry you're having to do this. And, you know, if I find that, I'm going to say a prayer for your just through your name, because I don't know your circumstances. But if I find time to get back around, circle back around, and God puts us together again, I want to sit down and have a conversation with you. So, but usually those kind of things are very passing, and you got to go, and you got to move. But yeah. So, but anyway, it's very important to ask their name. Just I'm going to pray for you guys. So
Thank you for reminding me that, because I needed to hear that too. That's my major takeaway. What's your name? And I think we all have I know after being in the customer care business for so long, is we have those 4 letters on our forehead, MMFI, make me feel important. Yeah. And you sure have made us all feel important today with your time, with your energy, with your love. Thank you for inspiring me to be a better human being and inspiring millions of people. We love you. We bless you. Dorothy says, I keep treats in my car. I felt God every time I give something away. All right. We love you. We bless you. Hey, everybody, I'll see you tomorrow. Go out and make it a great day. Sprinkle some love out there.
For having us. Bye.
Check us out on our website, same kind of our Facebook page. I'll be reading our book tonight. So.
Okay, we'll put that on there. We'll send show notes to everybody. After the show, we'll send you a copy as well.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
Bye-bye. Bye, everybody.